Hello and welcome to another Thriller Fiction Thursday with me, the author, Michael Campling. And today I'm reading another instalment from my Devonshire crime thriller, Lawful Duty. Today we're on Chapter 3. So, Chapter 3 from Lawful Duty, read by the author, Michael Campling. As soon as Detective Superintendent Chisholm made for the briefing room, DC Spiller followed. He could have waited for the others to take their places, but he was not going to follow along like a lost lamb. Yes, he was the new boy and his colleagues had mucked him around a bit, but that was not going to be the way of things. It was time to make a stand. The centre of the room was filled with a rectangular arrangement of tables, and Spiller marched straight to the front and took a seat. He'd be close to Chisholm and he'd have a clear view of the whiteboard. Perfect. Tim placed his notebook on the table and opened it at a blank page, his pen in his hand. The others filed in and took their places. The seat next to Spiller was taken by DC Adrian Cove, and he, too, had his notebook and pen at the ready. Lowering his voice, Cove tilted his head closer to Spiller and said, "If you miss anything, just make a quick note and ask me later. I'll fill you in." "Thanks, but I should be all right." "OK, but I remember what it was like on my first day, so the offer's there." "Cheers," Spiller said. "Good to know." The last to arrive was D.I. Nicholson, and as he sat down, he looked pointedly at Spiller. "Someone's keen?" Spiller sent him a smile. "I should hope we all are, aren't we?" A few of the others chuckled, and Chisholm said, "Quite right, Tim, that's the spirit." Nicholson looked put out for a second, but he laughed it off. "We'll be after our jobs next." "Not for a good while, sir," Spiller replied. "I've got a lot to learn, especially from the more experienced officers such as yourself." Mollified, Nicholson said, "Fair enough. You've got your head on your shoulders, I'll give you that." "OK, end of chit-chat," Chisholm announced. "Let's get this done." Chisholm whisked through several cases, moving briskly from one to another, assigning tasks and asking for progress reports, all without the aid of notes. Spiller scribbled hurriedly in his notepad, the furrows in his brow deepening as he tried to keep up. The others, meanwhile, hardly wrote anything, nor did they refer to their notebooks as they reeled off information when asked. They were all clearly on top of their game, but Spiller's mind was a whirl. "Last but not least, we're going to follow up on a missing person," Chisholm said. A chorus of groans ran around the room. Now, lads," Chisholm chided them. "Many an important case has started off as a misper, which is why it's an excellent job for a new DC to cut his teeth on." Spiller looked up with a start. Chisholm grinned at him. "That's right, Tim. You're the lucky chap holding the winning ticket. You'll work alongside D.S. Riley. He'll show you the ropes. All right, Paddy?" "Yes, Gov," Riley replied, though he didn't look too pleased about it. "Another misper, just what I've always wanted." "You'll like this one," Chisholm said. "The missing person is one Lindsay Clifford, and she was reported missing by her father, Francis Clifford." "The businessman?" Riley asked. "The guy with all the scrapyards?" "The same," Chisholm replied. "Mr. Clifford rubs shoulders with the great and the good, so he's what we might call a big cheese, although not to his face and not in front of the chief constable, if you get my drift. Mr. Clifford has his fingers in a lot of pies, and he also has deep pockets when it comes to local charities, including a drugs awareness campaign we're involved in ourselves." "Blimey, does he walk on water?" Nicholson asked with a grin. But if he'd hoped for a laugh, he didn't get one. "As far as we're concerned, yes," Chisholm said. "Mr. Clifford is to be treated with all the respect due to an upstanding member of the public. He's on our side, and we'd do well to keep it that way. Is that understood, Tim?" Spiller nodded. "Yes, Gov, I'll do my best." Chisholm let the silence hang in the air for a moment, then he hooked his thumb toward the door. "Let's get cracking." There were a few mutters of "Yes, Gov," and then everyone stood and headed back to the main office. When Spiller exited the briefing room, he found D.S. Riley waiting for him. "Get your coat," Riley said. "We're going for a drive." D.S. Riley drove a convertible Ford Escort, and when he accelerated out of his parking space, Spiller's head was thrown back against the headrest. Involuntarily, Spiller's hand groped for something to hold on to, and Riley didn't miss it. "Don't worry, lad," Riley said as he pulled into the road and worked his way rapidly up through the gears. "The XR3i might have a bit of poke, 103 horsepower to be exact, but I can handle it." "You don't use a pool car, then?" Riley's horrified glance spoke volumes. "Fair enough, Sarge." Spiller put his hands in his lap and tried to look relaxed. "Call me Paddy, or we'll get nowhere. But no Irish jokes, mind. I've heard them all. My dad was from Dublin, but I was born in Scarborough, and that's all you need to know." "Nice. I went to Scarborough on holiday when I was little. I remember the model ships. They staged a sea battle on the pond. It wasn't bad. Peazone Park." Riley drove in silence for a while. Then, "Aren't you going to ask?" "Ask what, Sarge? I mean, Paddy." "Where we're headed?" "No. Lindsay's father reported her missing, and the governor says we're to treat him with kid gloves, so I'd say we're going to meet the man himself, probably at his office. You mentioned scrapyards, but I doubt whether a high-profile businessman works on the site. He'll have an office near the city centre." Riley chuckled and tipped him a wink. "Spot on, lad. We'll be there in 10. 9 minutes later, according to Spiller's watch, Riley pulled the Ford to an abrupt halt outside a grand red brick building on Southern Hay West. The building boasted 4 floors, and with its tall sash windows and impressive wooden door, the place had the look of a townhouse from a more prosperous age. These days it housed only office workers, a gleaming painted sign above the door advertising Clifford Salvage and Demolition. As they exited the car, Spiller almost informed Riley that he'd parked on a double yellow line, but he stopped himself in time. His reaction to Riley's driving must have made him seem overcautious. Fussing over a parking restriction would only make matters worse. Riley strode up the steps and into the building without pausing to press the polished brass doorbell, and Spiller hurried after him. Inside, he found Riley in conversation with a receptionist, a woman beyond middle age, whose doughty demeanour said she was less than impressed. "Do you have some identification?" she asked. "Of course, madam." Riley flashed his warrant card, and the receptionist studied it. Then she cast her icy gaze at Spiller. Spiller produced his warrant card without being asked. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm Detective Constable Spiller of the Devon and Cornwall Police. We're sorry to trouble you, but we're here to see Mr. Clifford." "Yes, so this gentleman has already said, but without an appointment it's quite impossible." "Mr. Clifford will want to see us straight away," Spiller insisted. "It's about his daughter." The receptionist's face fell. "Is she all right?" "We'll discuss that with your boss," Riley replied. "Are you going to show us the way, or shall we go and look for him?" "One moment, please." The receptionist made a call, and a minute later she was leading them up the stairs to the top of the building. She halted outside a white wooden door, but before she could knock it was opened from within, and a silver-haired man appeared in the doorway, his face creased with worry. "Gentlemen, come in," he said. "I'm Francis Clifford. Thank you for coming so promptly." He nodded to the receptionist. "Thank you, Margaret. Perhaps some tea for these officers?" He glanced at Riley. "Or would you prefer coffee?" "Coffee would be appreciated, thanks," Riley replied. "Same for me, please," Spiller said. "Thank you, Margaret." "You're welcome, sir," Margaret said, her tone a little less frosty. She headed back down the stairs, and Clifford gestured to his office, urging the 2 men inside. Riley strolled in, taking a look around, and Spiller followed suit. The office had clearly been designed to portray a certain image. The single desk, made from polished dark wood and topped with green leather, was large and sturdy, and the bookshelves were crammed with matching sets of hard-backed books. The plain burgundy carpet was deep underfoot, and the walls were adorned with gold-framed watercolours of verdant landscapes. Everything in the room spoke of solid reliability and good old-fashioned integrity. Mr. Clifford was a man of substance, not some flash-in-the-pan business tycoon with ideas above his station. "Please have a seat," Clifford said as he took his place behind the desk. "Thank you, sir," Riley replied. He made himself comfortable in a seat facing Clifford, and Spiller took the remaining chair, getting out his notebook and pen as he sat down. Clifford, meanwhile, seemed to be having difficulty composing himself. He ran his hands through his hair repeatedly, all the while taking slow breaths as if to calm himself. Are you all right, sir? Spiller asked gently. No, Clifford snapped. Of course I'm not all right. What kind of daft question is that? My daughter is missing, for God's sake. Yes, sir, that's why we're here, Riley replied, casting a glance at Spiller that said, let me do the talking. Spiller took the hint, sitting upright and waiting with his lips shut tight. Now, sir, Riley went on, when did you first notice that something might be wrong? Might? Clifford demanded. There's no might about it. Lindsay is missing. Riley nodded. I hear what you're saying, Mr. Clifford, but how old is Lindsay? 22. No, 23. Clifford pinched the bridge of his nose. Christ, I don't know whether I'm coming or going. It's a distressing situation, sir, Riley said, but Lindsay is an adult, so she may have her own reasons for taking off. That's often the way these things turn out, but we'll do everything we can to find her as soon as possible. Remember, for all we know, Lindsay is safe and well. Don't imagine the worst. Try to stay calm and help us to help you. To begin with, we need to know when you first became aware that something was wrong. Yes, of course. Forgive me, gentlemen. I don't mind admitting I'm worried sick. Clifford ran a hand over his mouth. This morning, at about 8 o'clock, I called Lindsay to ask her something. I was hoping to catch her before she left for work, but there was no reply. I redialed several times, but there was no answer. That's very unusual, but I thought she might have gone to work early, so I waited for a while and called her work number. One of her workmates answered, but she said she hadn't seen Lindsay. I left a message asking Lindsay to call me as soon as she got in, but the call never came. It's about 9 o'clock I tried again, but she still hadn't arrived at work. And that was when I began to worry. Spiller was busy making notes, and without looking up he said, What time does Lindsay usually start work? 8:30, Clifford replied, and she's always punctual. She takes her job very seriously, and she's never late. Where does she work? Riley asked. Lindsay works for the county council in the finance department. She's training to be an accountant, but at the moment she's working as an assistant. Spiller paused to look up at Clifford, taking in the man's gold watch and cufflinks, his silk tie. Riley, it seemed, was doing the same, and Clifford wasn't immune to their scrutiny. I know what you're thinking, Clifford said. Why is the daughter of a wealthy man taking an entry-level job and earning public sector wages? It had crossed my mind, Riley admitted. It's probably not relevant, but Lindsay wanted it that way. She's always been independent, and she wanted to start from the bottom and work her way up. I've offered to help her more times than I can count, but she always turns me down. My daughter is determined to make a life for herself, and when she sets her mind on something, there's nothing anybody can do to dissuade her. Well, that's good, Riley said. It helps to build a picture of Lindsay, and we'll get into more detail in a minute. But tell us what happened after you'd called her office. At first, I thought she must have taken to her bed, maybe with the flu or something, although she's rarely ill. But I couldn't figure out why she hadn't called her manager to let him know. So I cancelled my appointments and drove to her flat. I'll give you her address in a second, but I can tell you she isn't there. The place seemed abandoned. What gave you that impression? Spiller asked. From the corner of his eye, he saw Riley purse his lips in disapproval, but he couldn't sit there and say nothing. His mind was teeming with questions, and he had to ask at least some of them. Clifford looked down for a moment, as if picturing the scene. It's a small flat, and whenever I've visited, it's always been tidy, but this morning there were dirty dishes piled in the sink and laundry on the floor. In her bedroom, there's a chest of drawers, and they'd all been left open, and her bed was a mess. It looked as though she'd grabbed some clothes and left in a hurry, like she'd run away. Could that be a possibility? Riley asked. Clifford looked as though he'd been slapped. No, Lindsay wouldn't just disappear without a word. She'd never do anything so hurtful. I know I said she was independent, but she's always been thoughtful and caring. We're close. We're a close family. If there was something wrong, she'd tell me or my wife, but there was nothing. We spoke last week on the phone, and Lindsay was, well, she was happy. That's a good sign, Riley said. What day did she call? I called her. It was Thursday, in the evening. We didn't talk about anything in particular. It was just a chat, a catch-up. Lindsay was fine. If she'd been upset, I would have known. I wouldn't be so sure, Spiller thought. When he'd been Lindsay's age, his calls to his parents had concealed more than they'd revealed. Putting that thought to one side, he said, "When did you last actually see your daughter?" "The Sunday before last. I took Lindsay out to lunch. The Double Locks. It's by the canal. I expect you knew that." "I certainly do," Riley said. "Was your wife there as well?" "No, it was just the two of us. Something we do sometimes, a sort of tradition. We had a nice time." Clifford's voice faltered and he cleared his throat. Riley paused before asking his next question. "Does Lindsay live on her own?" Clifford nodded. "No flatmate or lodger?" Riley went on. "No, it's a one-bedroom flat. It's on Raleigh Road, number 12. It's near Magdalen Road." "I know it," Riley said. "Some nice houses down there. Lindsay can afford the rent on her salary, can she?" "She could, but I own the building and I don't charge her rent. Lindsay lives in the top floor flat and she keeps an eye on the other tenants. Before you ask, I knocked on all the doors and I asked at the other flats, but no one's seen Lindsay since Saturday afternoon." "Who saw her and when?" Spiller asked. Carol Whittaker. She has the flat beneath Lindsay's, flat 2. She was going out on Saturday when she saw Lindsay coming home with some groceries. There's a small convenience store on the main road. Lindsay often goes there, I believe. She's mentioned it on more than one occasion, but she always calls it the shop. I think it's a spa." "We'll check it out," Riley said. "Do you have a recent photo of Lindsay?" "Yes." Clifford picked up one of the 2 silver picture frames on his desk and handed it to Riley. "This was taken a couple of years ago on her 21st birthday." Riley studied the photo, then he handed it to Spiller. "Slip that out of its frame, would you, Detective Constable?" "Certainly." Spiller undid the clips on the back of the frame and released the photo. It showed an attractive young woman with straight dark hair. She was beaming for the photographer, her brown eyes alight with happiness. The photo showed only her head and shoulders, but she appeared to be wearing a cream-coloured top with thin straps over her bronzed and athletic shoulders. Spiller gazed at the photograph sadly, hoping this young woman was all right. "Does Lindsay have a boyfriend?" Riley asked. "Yes, Tony Carter. They've been going out for months." The corner of Clifford's lips turned down, and Riley seemed to notice. "You don't approve?" "It's not that. Not exactly. Tony's a nice enough lad, but he's—" Clifford tutted as if scolding himself. "It's not for me to cast aspersions. Like I said, he's nice enough. We've met a few times and he seems like a decent bloke, but I don't know him well." "Can you give us his contact details?" Riley asked. "I don't have his address, but we probably have his phone number at home, so I can find it for you later. Oh, and I know where he works. He's an estate agent at Berkeley's. He's based at their office on Dixie's Field." "We'll pay him a call," Riley said. "Any other close friends we should know about?" Clifford held out his hands and let them fall to his desk. "I can't keep track of them. I think Lindsay has a fairly wide social circle, but there's no one significant, as far as I can tell. No one who stands out." He looked thoughtful. "My wife might be able to tell you more." Plucking a business card from a polished metal container on his desk, Clifford offered it to Riley. "My home number is on there. Give Diana a call and she'll tell you about Lindsay's friends." "Thank you, sir." Riley took the card and studied it briefly before pocketing it. "We'll want to have a chat with Mrs. Clifford in person, but that can come later." You must do whatever you need to do, but please don't disturb my wife more than necessary. Diana's nerves have been a little frayed recently, and after today—" Clifford's sentence ended in a small sigh. "We understand, sir," Riley said. "We'll be sensitive, and we'll chase up a few other leads first. Thank you. I appreciate that." Clifford hesitated. "Would you be able to call me later and let me know what you found out?" "Of course," Riley replied. "We'll keep you in the loop as much as we can. In the meantime, please try not to worry yourself. I've seen this kind of thing before, and there are all kinds of reasons for a person to drop off the radar once in a while. Lindsay might call you at any moment, so please bear that in mind. If she does get in touch, let us know as soon as you can." Riley rummaged in his jacket pocket and retrieved a business card of his own. He passed it to Clifford, who took it without comment. "We'd like to take a look at Lindsay's flat," Riley said. "I take it you have a key?" "Yes, hold on a second." Clifford opened a desk drawer and pulled out a long metal box, laying it on his desk before opening it. Spiller counted 10 rows of small compartments, with 5 to a row, and it looked as though they all contained keys. While Clifford ran his fingers over the compartments in turn, Spiller said, "How many buildings do you own, Mr. Clifford?" "Oh, far too many." Clifford looked up and brandished a key ring labelled 12 Raleigh Road. It contained at least half a dozen keys, and he handed the whole bunch to Riley. "Do you need someone to come with you?" Riley shook his head. "We can handle it on our own. At this stage, we'll have a preliminary look around, but we may need to revisit the flat later. Can we hang on to these for a while?" "Yes, I don't see why not, so long as you bring them back when you're done." "That's very helpful, sir," Riley said. "We'll head off now and see what we can find out." He stood, and Spiller copied his example. "We'll be in touch," Riley went on. Clifford rose and shook their hands in turn, but he didn't say a word. The man looked drained and a little lost, as though he'd been keeping his act together during their conversation, and now he had no idea what to do. Riley and Spiller took their leave and made their way swiftly back to Riley's car. "Lindsay's flat?" Spiller asked. "Lindsay's flat," Riley replied. "Hop in. We'll be there in 5. Spiller didn't doubt it. That's the end of Chapter 3 of Lawful Duty by me, Michael Campling. Available on Amazon, of course, as an ebook. You can read it for free in Kindle Unlimited at the moment of recording. And you can also order the ebook at your local library and see if they'll get it in for you. And don't worry, I do get paid a little bit if that happens. It should be available there. If not, let me know. Give me a shout and I'll chase it up. Paperbacks, of course, also available. You find those on Amazon. You should be able to find them elsewhere. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. And do please make sure you catch all the other episodes by subscribing. Liking and sharing is great as well. If you know somebody else who might like this, might like a bit of a crime thriller read by the author. Yeah, I know I'm not a professional narrator or a professional actor in any way. I do my best. I hope it's okay. All right, well, happy reading. Take care, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.